Hey fellow dorks and nerds, I am Blunty, and you know how some people in our fandoms get really super duper upset about inconsistencies in lore and continuity and mistakes the writers make when they should have been, if they don't know enough about the show to not make the mistake they shouldn't be writing for the show and stuff like that. Especially, it seems, in sci-fi fandoms like Star Wars, Doctor Who, and super duper especially in Star Trek. Shows with long histories, multiple series, and just tons of content, often in various mediums, just TV and movies and comic books and novels and all. For some reason, these basement dwellers just get irrationally angry whenever their favorite show has a new entry that doesn't precisely align with lore, history, the presentation of technology, or institutional ideas that have been well established in previous shows and media for years. Star Trek is, of course, a great example, a great current example. If you're part of the fandom, old or new, and you've even casually engaged with or just passively observed fan interactions online recently, you know exactly the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Would you like to understand why some people get really upset by this stuff and it just doesn't bother other fans at all, or they can just move past and go, oh well, it is what it is? Why some people scream at a camera in exasperation or write paragraphs of infuriated and detailed breakdowns about why the new stuff sucks so much because it ignores and abuses everything that has come before and how outrageous that is. And why other fans are all just, dude, why can't you just enjoy it for what it is? It's just a TV show. It's not a historical documentary. Who cares? Just enjoy the show for what it is, you basement dweller nerd. Get a life. Well, here's the secret to it. And here's why, if you've ever mocked or derided or name-called one of these so-called basement dwellers, you just might be the jackass in the situation. Bear with me. It's a fundamental, absolute base, built-in, dyed-in-the-wool, made in the mold, bred in the bone, deep-rooted, ingrained, and congenital difference in how our brains work. And yes, I am one of those people who has a guttural and unavoidable reaction to, say, Star Trek ignoring its own established canon and lore and history and functions of the technology, but I'll come back to my own personal stuff and how I handle it in a later date. But so what is that difference? Well, what is the ingrained difference? What is the literally congenital difference in here that makes us act like that? Well, it's a way of thinking, a way of processing information. It's not learned, it's inherent, literally in how the brain works. It's unchangeable and hardwired up there. And it's something extremely common, but not exclusive to people with autism. So let's establish that real quick. Autism, in the most oversimplified way I can put it for clarity's sake, for the sake of this video, is a different way of processing information. Our brains are very literally, and in the absolute truest medical sense, wired up differently. Information that comes into us, be it sensory or data or just the process of how we think, it's inherently different from a neurotypical person. Now, there's a deep dive I could do about how we think differently, how visual thinking or logic maps or pattern thinking, bottom-up thinking, analytical, associative thinking, but frankly, we'll get sidetracked by a very wide berth if we try and do that. Just take it as read that the inherently different way we process information is in fact inherently different. I believe I've established enough trust over the decade and a half of making YouTube videos. You can trust me on this, yeah? We need a very specific structure and flow. There's a map, a very carefully structured and organized map of associations from facts we've learned, a flow of perfectly logical information from the bottom up, an analytical process. Fictional metaphor for you. You know how in Star Trek, most of the Vulcans we see will flare a little when someone else is doing something that is illogical and are utterly unable to resist the urge to tell that other person it is illogical and how the sensible and procedural way to achieve said goal should be done. Yeah, it's that. It is exactly that. We need, not just want, but literally require things to be internally consistent with the maps and rules we have already established. This cognitive rigidity makes it often hard to adapt and change to altered demands in our behavior. That's why a lot of us don't really react to change that well. Again, this cognitive rigidity is not exclusive to autism, but it is common amongst us, and it is my own frame of reference, it's my own lived experience, so it's why I'm using it as an example here. It makes it difficult to suddenly switch tasks, to change goals, or adopt to a change in, say, social expectations. When social interactions don't go to the script, it triggers anxiety pretty severely. And in the context we started with, fictional lore, canon, and continuity, especially when said fiction forms are a special interest, which drives us to collect, map, and organize every bit of information we can about it, well, when something comes along and contradicts something that we understood to be true, that forms a brick in the wall of our understanding, some part of the chain, some part of the map is missing or changed, our understanding and ability to think about and process how the show works within it, it's extremely disruptive. And I don't just mean it's a little bit annoying the writers did that. I mean, it's disruptive to how we think. It literally derails the train of thought, or in my case, as I've taken to calling it recently, the Roomba of thought. It puts a wall in front of the Roomba of thought. So the Roomba of thought's going this way. Oh, there's a new wall that wasn't supposed to be there. The Roomba goes dunk, and spins off in a completely different direction for a while instead of the path it was supposed to be going on. Maybe a bit of furniture would have been a better metaphor, but you get what. But I do mean it in the most anxiety-spiking, frustration-triggering, compulsive way possible. We need this shit to be consistent, because if it's not consistent, it can be anything from infuriating to overwhelmingly distracting. We literally can't concentrate or think about anything else because you've disrupted everything. What just happened disrupts the entire basis of not just what we think, but how thinking actually happens. It's like, say if you were reading a book and suddenly on page 105 of this book you were really, really enjoying, the printing was mirrored and every letter was inverted and every word was spelled backwards and the text now reads from bottom to top, right to left. The content is still identical. All the words are there in the right order. Every word that should be in the book is still there. But the method of how you read those words has been externally changed, disrupted. And while you can still read the words, now it takes tremendously more effort. You have to think about it, you have to concentrate on it, you have to work it out. Possibly so much effort that you consider it unreadable, useless, pointless. Why would some moron do that in the middle of an otherwise good book you were enjoying? What is the point of doing that? Why would they do that? To ruin your experience? How do they expect people to enjoy the book when it's like this? Don't they care about the people trying to read this book? Why are they deliberately making it a worse experience to read? Stupid. That's kind of what it feels like when a show ignores the established lore or continuity in canon. Let me give you a personal example. I love Stargate SG-1. Early on in the show, upon introducing the Zat-Nicotel, the Goa'uld version of a sidearm, or Zat-Gun as Colonel O'Neill coined it to accommodate his more practical way of thinking, it was established on screen and in dialogue and by demonstration very, very specifically. One shot stuns and temporarily disables and a lot of the time knocks out most targets. 2 shots in close succession will kill that target. And 3 shots disintegrates the target completely, whether it be a person or a box of stuff. They retconned this. Never said a word about it on screen and never acknowledged it. Just changed it. The 3rd shot suddenly no longer disintegrated anything, ever again. This was done for practical reasons, which made writing various encounters easier. Like, if you're shooting these things at someone and you're on a spaceship, and you miss them, hitting the wall behind them of the spaceship repeatedly, well, you really wouldn't want that to disintegrate and blow everyone out to the cold vacuum of space, would you? It would make writing action scenes a bit more tricky. I get that. But every single time they fire off multiple shots of a Zat-Nicotel in that show after that silent retcon, I am bothered with it. I look at where the shots go, I count the number of shots hitting anything or anyone. I'm distracted, I'm thinking about the change, and it's hard to focus on the action on screen when the established lore doesn't happen anymore. I've watched SG-1 countless times. I love that show, really love it. And it has never once stopped bothering me. And now when they do introduce the Zat-Nicotel, the first episode they're in, and establish the rules by which it operates, I already know it's a lie. I know it will change, and that bothers me too. So I can't even enjoy that bit of the episode properly anymore either. Because I already know I should not integrate that factual information they're delivering into my structure anymore. And that is just one tiny detail, one thing within a single show, done for reasons I can completely understand and comprehend, and I even agree with the change for practicality and storytelling's sake, it's a smart change. Hell, even scientifically, it makes more sense for this weapon not to be able to just vaporize anything it hits. I think the way it works for the rest of the show is the way it should have worked, and I think the mistake was establishing disintegration in the first place. That was the mistake, not the retconning. But it still doesn't change anything about how much it all bothers me. It still bugs me, and it's not because I'm a nerd, it's not because I need a life, it's not because I'm pedantic, it's not because I need to touch some grass. It's because my brain works in a way, it's wired up in a way that needs things to have internal consistency. And if and when there is a deviation from that, it makes it hard to process. It makes it hard to think. The new information, the change, literally has to go through entirely different networks in my brain. It doesn't fit where it should, so it has to be processed separately. And that takes extra time, extra effort, and usually a manual effort. It changes how I can enjoy something. Like in my book example. Reading, for the most part, for most people, becomes an automatic thing. We don't even actually read the whole words. We just sort of recognize the patterns of familiar words. But if you mess with that, standard and expected pattern, reading becomes very, very difficult again, and you're focused more on the process of reading than absorbing the actual story being told to you through those words, right? Now maybe, hopefully, you understand why some people might get what, in the opinion and limited perspective of boring, normal, average, ordinary, neurotypical people, might deem to be unreasonably perturbed about a new show, not carefully observing and respecting the lore, the canon, the rules, the technology and ideologies established in the previous entries. It literally, and I mean literally, makes it physically more difficult for us to enjoy the show. And that feels shitty. Because we love that thing. It feels like someone did it deliberately just to mess with us. We know that's not true intellectually, but that's how it feels. It feels like an insult, and it's hard not to react to that. Especially when it comes to not just things we love or have a special interest in, but things we relate to. And Star Trek has a long history of deliberately or accidentally sometimes giving us some neurodivergent characters to latch onto. We see ourselves reflected and go, oh. So when that feels damaged or ignored or changed, it's hard to accept and adapt to. Which is a bit of an issue, because frankly, Trek is not what you would call hard sci-fi to begin with, and it's never been super good at some kinds of consistency, especially the original series, which is like but as you got deeper into Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and Voyager and even Enterprise, it became a little more cement. And some stuff might as well be hand-wavy goblin magic, like the Heisenberg compensators, which, if something you're interested in, or perhaps have a special interest in, is quantum mechanics, might also make you feel irrationally cranky, because Heisenberg compensators need a lot of mental gymnastics to make work within the Star Trek universe. Seriously, Google it. A lot of nerds just like me have written extensive treatises on how the compensator might actually work properly and not break every law of physics we understand. Anyway, hopefully I've bridged some shores here and given both sides of the issue some new perspective. Maybe stop mocking people who take issue with their fiction being messed with. Yes, it's all made up by a bunch of dorks sitting in a room somewhere trying to tell interesting stories, but it does matter to some people that it is done with respect and is consistent with what has already been done. And if it's not, we need an on-screen explanation about why. And maybe it doesn't matter to you at all. Maybe you can just ignore that stuff and just enjoy the show and the characters and exciting adventures. But maybe it's time to learn some human empathy and make even a small effort to understand why it's so difficult for some of your fellow fans to deal with changes like that. So just make fun of them. And for you continuity cops out there, maybe if you didn't already understand why it bothers you so much and why you can't help but feel compelled to take it so seriously, hopefully this helps you out again. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're autistic like me. That sort of mental rigidity is not exclusive to us, but taken from me. At least understanding why this stuff can be so annoying helps you work around it, helps you deal with it so you can find ways to still enjoy the shows a little bit easier. Also know that it won't solve the issue, just knowing why you get so cranky at stuff like this. If you're like me, and the Zat Nicotil thing, I still can't let that go. It still bugs me. It always will. I've tried to let it go before, but I refuse to let it stop me from loving SG-1 in the first place. I just kind of force myself to push past it. But again, it's always there. But every time I think about that and I start getting cranky about it, I just go, oh, okay, this is why it makes me cranky. Let's concentrate on the rest of the show and just try and let that drift away as best I can. Not a perfect solution, but it's better than I used to be. Thank you for watching. I'm Blunty. I will catch you next time. Thank you to the patrons, of course, scrolling up above there. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully mixing this stuff in with Star Trek has given you a little bit of broader understanding of neurodivergent behavior. I don't know why I said it like that. Just felt fun.